Good afternoon. I'm Shawn Childs of Fantasy Analyst uh, at High Stakes Fantasy Analyst at Substack.com. And also, I am putting content on Fantasy on SI. I call it on SI Fantasy. It sounds a little bit better, but I just wanted to walk through the pitching projections a little bit. It's the same thing I did with the hitters, and probably do a little better job at the front end of this. I kind of detoured and it lasted a lot longer, but I'm just trying to give a visual. So when I'm doing these pitcher projections, I'm trying to get a view of each team structure, and the back end of the starting rotations, like the 6 and 7 starter, are going to be kind of wild cards, and anybody that gets more playing time during the year will be most likely due to an injury. So I kind of want to predict or project potential within reason. If I think somebody has an injury risk, I'll knock off a few starts. And it's just basically to give the user or me a visual of what that pitcher can potentially do and their skill set. You know, their strikeouts per nine, their walks, what batters hit against them, direction, how many innings they pitch, and I'll show you a couple data points that are on it. You're probably like, what are these strange numbers? And I think they're kind of interesting. So when we're looking at this spreadsheet here, like over here, so you got the Baltimore Orioles up top here. Probably not on top for you, but right in front of me. But as far as there's a little green number. So for projecting wins, each team has an over under in Las Vegas. So I'm going to use that as the baseline. And that's when it says VG is Vegas. The over under for the Baltimore Orioles is 88.5 wins. And then to just as a reference point, I think, maybe a lot of teams, maybe 2/3 of their wins come from their starters and the rest from the bullpens, but each team will have a different structure. So last year, in the little green number to the right of the 88.5 is 29 wins. And that's how many bullpen wins Baltimore's had last year. And if you slide over the right, the other green number is the number of saves Baltimore had. They had 46. So I just use that as a kind of a visual, and I don't try to force it, but I don't really, the wins for relievers, you're trying to, the same thing, you put them in range. So I'm not really concerned about that. But the starters, I want to, basically, get close to 60 or 59 wins out of their starters. And I don't want to over project. And if a team scores a lot of offense in the bullpen, I mean, so you just, like I said, just put it in range. So those key numbers are there. There'll be some teams as you go along, really good combination of like 48 wins, 50 saves. That's pretty good, especially if you got relievers in that bullpen. But as far as Baltimore's starting rotation, pretty straightforward. Grayson Rodriguez, a really, really talented arm. He hasn't really hit his stride where you think he's a foundation ace, but he has a potential. 29-9, and I think of the minors with really, really good numbers. Thought he would be better. Struggled with home runs, went sent down, and this year, he's kind of a free price point. There's a lot of pitchers in his range where you could say, I really like that guy, or I think this other pitcher could pop. So you only, most likely, unless you're on a short term, you're probably only going to get one of those, maybe as your SP2, depending on what you're doing. Zach Eflin pitched really well 2 years ago. Had a bunch of strikeouts. I think a career high 184. Had like 52 less last year. Missed a few starts, but just a steady arm. More value, I think, in WHIP for him. A little less in ERA. Gives up some home runs. The change of ballpark in Baltimore, the righties' power is going to be a little inflated. So so he's could step back in ERA, but a decent arm. Charlie Morton, you know what he's getting, long time resume at the back end of his career. Walk started to creep more on the occasion. Home runs are a problem. Dean Kramer's a guy that's kind of hung around a little bit. Looked like he has a little more upside. Hasn't really got the strikeout rate where you want him to kind of be a little more of a difference maker, but kind of a back end grinder, could potentially help you. The Sugano guy from Japan doesn't really strike out that many batters. Nothing really crazy. Apovich is a guy that's going to fill in. Has some upside talent. Walks too many guys. Not a lot of depth in innings, so wins will be a little problem. And Trevor Rogers will probably be a rotational option there. So, but he's coming off an injury, and I think just gave him like five starts, just more fill in to give him. And the same thing when I'm doing these, I give each team 162 starts. So if you look at the team, Orioles are like, I think Grayson gets 32 starts. I think Eflin gets 31. So those numbers would be higher. And when I do the fantasy points gain scores, those are going to be reflective a little bit more, bumps them up a couple of spots. And you play this game, because you like fantasy and you have an opinion, and I'm just, it's a reference point. It's not exact science, but there's going to be times when I'm have a player here that's going to identify that, like, this guy's kind of intriguing, and he's rated a lot higher than I thought, or the general public. So, and as far as the bullpen, Felix Batista, great a couple of years ago, and then he had Tommy John surgery. I did highlight a couple of I like Batista, Tommy John. I highlighted he's coming off of Tommy John, and those guys that had the internal brace thing, I highlighted that number behind, because I kind of want to track to see how each one of them do. So they probably didn't get all the Tommy Johns, and it depends on how far it is. But if they missed last year and they're coming, I tried to identify those. So, but Batista, throwing, big fastball, really improved. So, pretty good offense. So, 37 saves, just a ballpark. Last year they had 46, and Baltimore's offense should score some runs and stuff like that. So now we go to the Red Sox. Crochet pitched, I think, 146 innings last year, had 200 some strikeouts. Even though with a bump of to 30 starts, 170 innings, there's only 25 more innings this year. Pretty good record. Boston's going to score runs, 14-7. The strikeouts, I didn't really kind of give him exactly I think he was like 12.7 or 12.8, because little more length in the season. He's coming off a little more, innings count. Is he a little bit does his arm back up a little bit? But I do like his arm. I just want to be fair with that. I think that he still has a relatively short resume, and he still has to prove himself a little bit to me as far as handling the depth in the innings. Tanner Huck is a guy that I think it could kind of be a workhorse. Doesn't strike out a lot of guys. Could be better. Kind of a sinker ball pitcher. I think he's a really interesting back end pitcher in 12 and 15 team leagues. 12, he might be like a 7 starter, and a 15 team, he may be that 5 to 6 range, depending on if you're a pitcher heavy league. So I think just he's going to get starts, give you some innings, potentially, fill out the back of your rotation. Not going to kill it in strikeouts, but I think there could be improvements. I kind of compared him to Roy Halladay, is where I think that, he kind of struggled earlier in his career, and then he got better, and he got a ton of strikeouts because he was pitching like 240 innings. So obviously Tanner Huck isn't going to get there. I'm not sure what to make about Walker Buehler. Really struggled last year. He had talent with the Dodgers. Just played at neutral, 27 starts, and, decent ERA and whip. Strikeouts just not where they were before. Could potentially be better. Brian Bello, he's got a little shoulder injury. I gave him 26 starts and missed some things. I'm not really confident in him, and I could downgrade his starts if he definitely is going to. I knocked him out for, part of April anyways, but if the shoulder injury lingers, he's kind of on my avoid list. I would have drafted him in a late player in a reserve round or something like that, but he's off. Cutter Crawford, pitched pretty good last year. Just battled home runs were a problem. Everything else lined up pretty good. I think whip will be another guy. Whip will be a little better than ERA through strikes. Giolito's coming off the eternal brace. Gave him like a half season, nothing. The bullpen, I favored Liam Hendricks. Sorry, his fastball was a little higher. I gave him 31 saves, and then that's more of an indication of, like, I think it's a stronger position than most think. Well, maybe that Chapman might get 15 or 16, and he get 20 or something like that. And then I just put Whitlock at the back end there. So pretty straightforward to the Red Sox. Of there's a couple of nice arms there, but overall there's a lot of players that I'm not interested in. Garrett Cole, just similar to Garrett Cole. His ERA isn't under 3, and the numbers line up, and he should be a really good pitcher, but he still has that injury from last year, and will it carry over to this year. Max Fried, he's a guy that I thought had injury risk last year with his elbow forearm thing, could break down eventually Tommy John surgery. I didn't want to kind of slight him too much and miss too many starts, because he did pitch well last year after struggling a little bit. But so I gave him 30 starts, but he does have a little bit injury risk. He's been really phenomenal for the Braves, wins games, and gives good innings. So there's a lot to like there. Pitching for the Yankees, different. The right field fence a little shorter. Clark Schmidt, pretty talented arm. Just doesn't get the innings aren't deep enough for me yet to consider him as trusted asset. But he's a value in drafts, because I think his ERA is going to be better than, in this case, his ERA and whip are kind of close. His walks are a little bit high, 3.1, strikeouts a little bit better, home runs are fine. Righties and lefties didn't really hit him that well last year, 222 and 238. So I think that he should improve, viable back end starter. but he still has a little bit of injury risk for me. Luis Gil had a great season last year, already had a shoulder injury. I have him for 25 starts, and I'm not confident that he'll make that after the last update. So I would naturally downgrade him and shift to Stroman. And if you're interested in Gil and he slides, 5 or 6, 7 rounds later, you can always pair him up with Stroman. It's not the same pitcher, but at least you get a Yankee pitcher with him and kind of pair the two together. So I think that's a decent combination, and Will Warren there. So Devin Williams, everybody likes him. Projects really well. 38 saves. Strikeout's going to be there, but he still had a stretch factor in his back, and he had a couple discs, and he had a problem. I said, I think there's a little bit of risk. Weaver was really good last year, filling in, and he just was a much better arm in the bullpen. The Tampa pitchers are kind of interesting because there's a lot of talented arms, and if I think they were pitching in their home ballpark, they would really, really be intriguing. But I think the change to like a Yankee Stadium type of thing, people think more home runs. There's going to be more runs scored, the hotter weather and stuff like that. So McClanahan was really, really good I think it was 2 years ago when he was at his peak. He's got the skill set to be, that frontline ace, but I'm not sure that he's going to get, that 195 innings. So I gave him, 30 starts with 5.5 innings per game. You'd like that to be closer to 6 innings per game with 32 starts to kind of get to the number. But it projects pretty well. Everything lines up what it is. I really like Shane Baz. I gave him 30 starts, and I'm probably a little more aggressive on him than probably most because I just think that he's ready to go. But the same thing, his innings per start are going to be lower. And if they're lower innings per start, the chance of wins are a little bit less, Last year, for reference point, their bullpen, Tampa's bullpen had 42 wins. That was pretty good for them, but that also means their starters are coming out early and less chance at wins. So, I kind of kept that in mind there. So when I'm doing this stuff, I really like Taj Bradley. Gave him a full season of starts. He really struggled a little bit last year with a home run, still a factor, but he looks like he's improving. Handle righties well. He's improved against lefties. Ryan Papoy, I believe it is. He definitely improved. I'm not sure that he could get to the 32 starts, but I gave him 28. He's in that range where he fits with all three of those pitchers, but I think the innings don't trust him as much, and I don't think he has a ceiling as high as the others. So, but like his arm, the walk's a little bit higher. The strikeouts probably don't have as much potential, and home runs are a little bit more of a factor. But, a steady arm at the right price, he's viable. And then Drew Rasmussen has been a really talented arm the last 4 years, ERA under 3. When you look at it, like he really stands out. But length of innings is going to be a problem. I think he's going to be successful on the mound. And he's pretty much free in draft. So I think he got a free shot, especially in a 15-teamer. I think he's close to the 18th, 20th round. I'm not a fan of Pete Fairbanks. He's got injury risk for me. I really showed that when I gave him like only 37 appearances, 15 saves. Edwin Yosita is a guy that pitched really well last year in the bullpen. And he's looked pretty good in spring. So I think he's going to be the factor for the saves. I really like Hunter Biggie as a sleeper, but his numbers in the majors lined up pretty good. He's got a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. The command was okay, but behind the scenes in the minors, when I do the projections, it really forces you to look at his back numbers in minors. Like, am I getting too excited about a player that I shouldn't be? So I think that he makes sense as a late flyer and maybe a draft champion and a player to follow during the season, because if his command comes along, he is actually going to be the best arm in this bullpen and be a future closer. And he just walks if he's like 3.5 and he's striking out 12. I got him 12.7 strikeouts per 9. So I think that he is definitely have to pay attention to. Kevin Gausman comes off a down year. Last year, the bullpen in comparison for Toronto, only 23 wins and 36 saves. Tampa Bay had 42 wins, 51 saves. That's a big difference between the two. Only 78.5 wins projected. Gausman, lost his rhythm, lost his strikeouts. He wasn't the same dominating pitcher. So, I can't really give him back the 10 strikeouts per 9 or something. So played the middle of the road. I figured maybe, he's a veteran arm, would bounce back a little bit. And we'll see how the reports are at spring training and see if he can get his strikeouts to see the level of interest. If he's looking a little bit better, people will fight for him and a little bit in drafts. I don't think he's going to jump out a bunch of rounds, but he'll move up some. And I think they're almost identical. Jose Barrios, kind of an underachiever in his career, but he gets 32 starts every year. I gave him a couple missed starts in this when I did it for some reason. I can't even, so long ago. But I mean, he hasn't missed a start in like 3 years, but he definitely, had pockets of where he was struggling and home runs were a problem, and he's a little bit easier to hit. Chris Bassett had a coming off a down season. He's pitched well enough, and you're like, yeah, he looks kind of cloudy. I want to avoid him, but based on his price point, you can give him a shot and see where he goes, and if he is going to be helpful, and if he doesn't, you can kind of churn him at the back end because there's no really draft cost. Max Scherzer was actually kind of interesting. His numbers, when you look at it, is like, I really want Max Scherzer. He hasn't pitched a bunch of innings, but he's still 39 years old. Guy that's proven that he get batters out. He doesn't need that 97-mile-an-hour fastball. He's got really secondary pitches. And I looked at it, I was like, man, this is the type of guy that's a veteran arm that if you really got a good front pitching staff, he could really kind of be somebody steady for you. I gave him 26 starts, neutral, only 5.6 innings per start, 145 innings. So home runs are a little bit higher, but the potential is there. So I'm kind of, I guess I'm trying to intrigue that he could potentially be a back end filler. But I'm not going to like really jump him, a lot of rounds or anything. I'm going to pay attention to his spring training. If he stays healthy and he's no issues, then he's had the resume and he's older and 39 years old. I think he still could help some. Bowden Francis really was a monster last year. The end of the last 2 months of the year, split finger pitch was really devastating. Struck out a lot of guys. His fastball really wasn't. He's only in the low 90s, and it's not a difference maker, but he did get like a lot of swings and misses with it. So because of his resume doesn't have length and overall success, I kind of was going to be careful. And he did have I believe a forearm or some injury last year. He missed time, so that has to be a factor into his arm coming into this year. So neutral on him. If I had a choice between him and Scherzer, I think just based on Scherzer's length of success, I would take him. But Francis, I get the attraction. A lot to like. Look at batters last year, hit 194 against him, righty 199. Left-handed, those are really, really good numbers. Was throwing strikes, showed improvement, and something like there. I think Jeff Hoffman is fine at the bullpen. I think he proved enough to me where I think he'll keep the job and have success. Chad Green got some saves, a little bit injury prone, hasn't pitched a lot of innings, and Yami Garcia tended to give up home runs, and he does have command, and he did look better last year, and he can give up saves, but when he's pitching in the ninth, he pretty much has given up some home runs at times to lose games. The Chicago White Sox, it's not even worth talking about anybody on this roster for starting pitching. It's going to be bad all the way across. Jordan Leisure, and I'm going to make a point there. Like even looking for saves in this bullpen, it's like don't even bother. I guess I get that you want to get some saves in kind of, if you miss the second closer or if you're trying to sprinkle somebody in, but it just shows the weakness of a team when you look at last year. That I don't know how many games the White Sox won last year, but their bullpen had 15 wins and their relievers had 21 saves. So Leisure's coming off a guy, he has talent to be a closer, but he technically, really, really struggled after that. He showed something early in the year, but I don't even think it's worth the gamble. I think he's the best guy armed to potentially close, but I'm not even going there. And Baroa is a guy with talent, throws hard, but command's a problem. It's just like a disaster. I would just cross off right now. I'm not even going to talk about Colorado too much. Maybe a reliever in there or something, but the White Sox in Colorado are pretty bad. Tanner Bybee fits in that upside. Grayson Rodriguez, Hunter Green, the pitcher for Seattle. Drawing a bank here. What want to get to him? Bryce Miller, and a few other pitchers. Which one of these guys is going to be the best, or maybe 3 or 4 of them may be kind of steady. But just really like the direction. He got the command. He could get better. 200 strikeouts. Just looks like he's a nice arm there, and he's got a couple of years under his belt. Luis Ortiz got bombed his first game in spring training. It's weird. You give up 6 runs in a game, you're like, oh, I'm off that guy. But he pitched really good for Pittsburgh. Didn't get a lot of strikeouts last year. He throws, his fastballs, got plenty of life in it. He had success for 1 year, and Cleveland's had a pretty good job of getting stuff out of pitchers. So I think that I gave him the number 2, the SP2 here on this pitching staff, and I think that he's going to be serviceable, and he's pretty much free. I would be looking to put him on my roster in this division. Same thing with Tampa Bay. Cleveland's relievers last year, 42 wins, 53 saves, pretty good combination for there. So Class A didn't get a ton of wins, but he I think Kate Smith had 9 or 10 or something like that, or he had a big number there. But anyways, Gavin Williams, nice arms, looked pretty good in spring training, and hasn't had a lot of length of innings and a little elbow or something last year. So I think that he looks pretty good. Just he's one of those guys last year. I like Max Meyer and like Garrett Crochet last year as back end starters. And I thought Meyer was going to be in a rotation. And he had Tommy John surgery and he had the chance to be a really nice arm. And Crochet, I identified him as a back end starter that I was very interested in. But I had the players in the wrong order. If I had Crochet in front of Myers, I would have had Crochet on every single team. And then I would have hit on a guy that was kind of a home run, at least for a half a season, and really, really helpful for strikeout. So you got to be careful. My point with Williams is that he's going to slot into place with some other pitchers, and you got to be sure that you have them in the right order. And that's all, that's a debate we all have because we all like different pitchers. But Gavin Williams, I'm not sure he can pitch 150 innings. Has pitched a couple of years ago, and I think 3 levels in the minors, and he pitched more. But last year he didn't pitch much. So off of him, I'm not off of him, but I'm not going to fight for him and move up. I only gave him 5.1 innings per outing. Has to prove a little bit for me. Tristan McKenzie had him that 1 year, was really, really good. Battled that, whatever that shoulder issue, or I don't even know what they call that injury. There's another pitcher that's coming off that this year. But if he's throwing a little bit harder and he's throwing strikes, he could improve a lot. But spring training is going to have to be a tell for him. Right now, he looks like an innings eater. The next couple arms, I guess the Joey Cantley guy can get some strikeouts and could improve, but his command has to be there. Lively was a guy that kind of surprised last year, but a bad inning eater. Emmanuel Clase, just beast cutter. He throws it close to 100 miles an hour, gets a ton of saves, and just really good. The only thing he lacks is compared to like Devin Williams or a couple other those top ones, he just doesn't get the strikeouts. He throws hard enough, but if he could just get that extra level there and maybe get 20, 30 more strikeouts, that would be pretty awesome. Kate Smith's a pretty good handcuff there, really improved, didn't have that same kind of skill set in the minors. Tyreek Skubal really was awesome last year, and he actually, when I was doing the projections, when I do these projections, I'm not trying to slot these players in certain order. You put their skill set, how many starts they're going to have, how many games that you can think they can potentially win in relation to how good the team is, the over-under, and the depth of innings. Like in this case, he pitches 6.3 innings per start, 200 innings. That's probably one of the higher projections for that. So he actually rated really well. The walks were really low. The home runs were under control. And when this washed out at the end, he rated a little bit better than Skeens. And I was pretty aggressive with Skeens' strikeout total because I think he's really going to pop this year. And I gave him, I don't think, maybe 32 starts. So I think he's a beast too. So, but Skubal nudged him in at least fantasy points gains for me. But really like that arm, whips, but under 1 should be expected with that command and strikeout rate. Jack Flaherty, pitched really well. He's had kind of a guy that was really good in 2019. Struggled with the Dodgers a little bit, had pockets where, but I think he's a veteran arm. He can do stuff. Home runs problem, but I'm just not sure where he goes if I'm going to fight for him. Reese Olson, I really liked him coming into last year. He had like a 4-pitch arsenal that could be kind of helpful. He ended up getting hurt, and I had him at AL auction like $1 or $2, $3 or something. But he falls in a range where I think that Clark Schmidt, and he's a player of interest for me for sure. I couldn't give him like the 32 starts because he was coming off injury, need lengths. But there's something to his arm, especially if he gets a little more command. Casey Mize, I put him in the starting rotation where I actually think he's a dark horse to get saves here. He's looked pretty good in spring training. Don't have a knockout ERA, and I don't have even a strikeout rate popping, but he potentially could move up a little bit in both areas. And just last year, he just struggled both righties and lefties, and coming off a down year, length of innings. So, but where he goes in the reserve round, I think he's the type of arm that's okay to take a shot with and see if he makes the rotation, see if he ends up the bullpen, and see if he is going to show that upside. Jackson Jobe, he's a really nice arm. I wasn't committed to him, and I think he was all the way there to be like a two month carry or something like that. I think the potential's there. I think at the end of the year, he could kind of be dominant, but he's not going to pitch. I only gave him 4.5 innings per start. and I just didn't see enough in his minor league resume to give him a lot of length. So I don't view him as a carry for me. I like his arm, and I'll have to wait a year on him. Kenta Maeda's look a little bit better. Coming off a down year was horrible. I think he'll end up being really the guy that is serviceable list. He's had success in the past. I think you can take a flyer on him. He's pretty much free and just see what happens. But nobody that people are going to really fight for him. Matt Manning's kind of underachieved. Just seemed like he was getting better. Just battled it last year. By default, Jason Foley will probably get the lead for saves. I gave him 25. He had like 28 last year. Kind of disappears. Throws hard enough, but doesn't get enough strikeouts. Kind of a sinker ball pitcher, but Holton pitches really well. He's a volume pitcher. He's a lefty, and he gets to pitch like more than an inning at a time, and he's been really, really good. Will they give him more save chances? I'm not sure. And Tommy Kane was there, so last year Detroit 46 relief wins, 45 saves, pretty good combination there. And the pitcher staff look a little bit better and has a little more upside, and they have a lot of young players offensively that could potentially develop to help their scoring. And then we go to the Kansas City Royals. Cole Reagans, he's got that stamp of the extra innings. He looks like he's there. He should a little more improvement. Just will he win 13, 15 games? But he's going to be a good arm. Nice all. I gave Lugo 30 starts. I'm not confident. He had that jump in innings. It was really phenomenal. 8th best pitcher last year. I gave him the numbers that he kind of fit, but I do think there's risks there. Michael Walker pitched well. Been pretty good the last couple of years. Been surprisingly winning at like a really good ratio of games. The command numbers there, the strikeouts aren't, but serviceable. And he was a guy that early in his career you thought would be a lot better. Michael Lorenzen, just steady arm, inning eater. Kyle Wright was good for the Braves a few years ago. He's coming off injury. Burbeck has looked pretty good in spring, and people are kind of, his numbers from last year, but I haven't seen enough, and he's been in the bullpen. The same with Lynch. Both of those pitchers could potentially improve, but they have to kind of show me. I think Carlos Estevez has a little injury in spring training. I don't know what it is, but he's going to compete with Lucas Urquig or Ursig. But Estevez got the advantage because he's got a little more experience. Hunter Harvey just never kind of did it. As far as the Twins, they're really a lot of guys that throw strikes, especially the first 3 pitchers, kind of proven resumes. The home runs, all of them give up a little bit, pitch up in the zone. Lopez just he just had enough, squirrely starts where he kind of backed up last year, and he gives up a few more hits than innings pitched than he had in the past, and the strikeout rate backed up. But I think he's decent, but I would much rather have some other younger arms in that range, like Tanner Bybee or somebody like that. I just think one guy's rising, and the other guy, I'm not sure that he's going to get better. He could be steady, he could improve, but same with Bailey Ober. Struggled last year out of the gate. Really had a 9-run game, but he really kind of came on, throw strikes. His whip I think he's a really advantage at whip. He did enough where I think that he can make it this year. He's a big guy. Joe Ryan, command pitcher, up in the strike zone. Strikeouts there. Home runs are a problem. Doesn't have that big fastball, and he has a little bit of he had a shoulder injury or something last year. So steady arm, but less confidence when I'm taking that SP2 of him pitching 32 starts. The Zebby Matthews, I gave him 25 starts because I think his command, he was walking less than 2 batters per 9. Strikeout rate was decent. I think he's a guy to keep an eye on. Obviously, he has a lot to prove because he hasn't had success in the majors. Simon Woods Richardson pitched decent last year at times, but Minnesota just kept him giving the quick hook. He rarely get, I don't even think he pitched in the 6th inning many games, but he was even getting through the 5th inning was kind of a problem at times. Festa got some strikeouts last year, flashed a couple games. Paddock's been a disappointment. Duran and Jack's pretty good combination. I gave Duran the stamp of 33 strikeouts. Willing to gamble. He hasn't reached that in the past, but he should be a little bit better than he was. He missed the first month or something last year. And Jax is definitely a pitcher that's improved and viable. And then we drop down to Houston. Am I going to make this? I want to get this done in an hour. I got to be there. So, but Framber Valdez, nice steady arm. Gave him 30 starts instead of 32. He has a little something going on there a little bit where he seemed like he rested a little bit. I'm a big fan of Hunter Brown. I just think that his last 146 innings last year, he had a 2.51 ERA. The command improved, and the strikeouts were there. And the thing is that he got off to a bad start and was really horrible, and he was able to correct that. That's a big win for me. I was a little aggressive with Lance McCullers making it back, missing some time. He's done it in the past. The reports are kind of short, but like okay. But I wanted to put him on enough starts where like think that he potentially get in there. And I actually, it's between him and Hayden Wesneski, and I think the Hayden Wesneski guy is an interesting uh, pitcher. But between the two of them, if you paired those two together, you might get a decent arm. Wesneski showed the command. Home runs were a problem, and his numbers when you look at him last year weren't really there. But and he had some sort of injury. I don't think it was arm related, but I could be wrong on that. But I think that's pretty interesting. Blanco overachieved. ERA under 3 was really impressive, especially with free point was a free guy last year. But when you look at the body of work where he's been, can he repeat it? I'm just I'm not confident will be there, so I backed him up a little bit. Spencer Arringhetti, the strikeouts had like 4 double-digit strikeout games in the last year. The command's not really there yet. Home runs are a little bit. I just think he'll be a little bit up and down, and he brings whip risk until he throws more strikes. And if he's walking guys, the depth of innings will be a problem, and that kind of restricts his wins. Josh Hader is what he is, kind of the guy that kind of frustrates you at times, gives up the home runs, but he can be brilliant, and the strikeouts can be there. And Houston's a little more willing to pitch him more than an inning, which is good to give him chances at more wins. And the save should be decent, that 35 to whatever. And he's never got into 40s. Angels pitching staff's kind of sketchy too. I put Detmers in there. I looked at him for a really long time, and he's a frustrating guy. He just killed teams last year, killed teams in AAA. But the strikeout rate, and if you look at the couple of years before that, it's like the profile is there, and he could get better. And you wish, like if he got to the Dodgers or some other good team, he might be a lot better. But I had to give him the respect of his potential and his strikeout rate. So the package is like really, really hot, and it's going to stand out. But the thing is, like, he's free. He's the type of guy that you want to put on your roster. Give him a shot. If he works out, he works out. But I think because he struggled so much last year, you got to have a little bit shorter leash with him. The Kikuchi guy for Yoshi Kikuchi, really ERA over 4 most of his career, really was awesome for Houston last year. Really came on. The strikeouts are better, but pitching for the Angels and leave him a little longer in games. I just don't know if there's there. I mean, he'll get drafted higher than I think. Jose Soriano, he throws a big fastball. He had stretches that were pretty good, and when you look at his minor league resume, there's enough there to trust that he's going to be helpful. Maybe the strikeouts could improve. I mean, the 8.5 per 9 is pretty low, but for considering his fastball and his experience, it could get better. I didn't give him a bunch of 32 starts, but I think that there's enough there. Tyler Anderson, Hendricks, nothing. Even the back end, nobody interests him. We know Kenley Jansen, experience. Same thing with them. They 72 wins, 29 bullpen wins, 35 saves. Ben Joyce is a guy that could get some saves, but he hasn't pitched a lot of innings. I really liked him a couple years ago, but I don't think I'm going to chase him around until he proves he can pitch, 65 innings or make 65 appearances. The ace, Severino, they're pitching a different park. Spring, Sears. I think those are the type of arms that you can kind of rotate in, maybe catch somebody at home and see how that ballpark plays. Just not a lot of like there. Even their starting rotation, there's just not much there that you want. Mason Miller's a beast, and he's going to just, but his save chances are compromised by lack of wins, 71.5 over under. The bullpen wins are 26. They only had 35 saves. Are they going to win more this year? I'm not sure. So, Miller is going to get you the strikeouts and be a pretty talented arm, but he definitely is going to give a little bit in the save column, which is, a big, when you're putting a stamp on a reliever early, like, in that second, third, fourth round or whatever you win a draft on it, it's kind of important to kind of get those as well. Now for Logan Gilbert, he really projected well. I think he was the 3rd best pitcher. He just showed the increase in whip, threw more strikes. His strikeouts were improving, the split finger. But the only thing he lacked last year is he didn't get wins. So I think that turns a little bit. I think they're going to be in a lot of games. I gave him 33 starts. I just think he's been dependable. And the same with George Kirby. I think he just will show up and be there everything. So both of them I gave four wins. I think Kirby's got definitely the better command of, his walk rate. I mean, they both have really good command, but the walk rate's like 1.3. That's really phenomenal. But I did give lean into Kirby. He's going to throw a split. I gave him a jump and strikeout, so he's going to show a little bit more. So he's like kind of that foundation arm. And the same thing when I went to Bryce Miller. I really liked the direction. He pitched really well. ERA under 3 last year. His strikeouts are like 8.5. But 1 year of experience. He was tough to hit. I think the strikeout's going to kind of pop too. So I'm very interested in him. Luis Castillo, very, kind of the guy that's just there, and they would love to trade him to somebody, but but everybody else wants one of those front 3 pitchers to give Seattle a bat. So I don't know how that shakes out. But Castillo's a, veteran pitcher. You know what you're going to get. Walks a few too many guys, and just had, moments like last year he really struggled against lefties. They had 275. So can he correct that? Brian Wu was a guy that was impressive. He threw a lot of strikes last year, really like better command than I thought. The whip and everything lined up really well, but he had a couple of injuries, and you're just not sure if he, if that was just a one-time thing or that it's going to be something that's going to catch up to him this year. So, but he goes like a 10th rounder. I'm interested, but most likely I'm getting in front of the pitching. So I'm not looking for that range for maybe my 3rd pitcher. I might even have 3 by the time I get to him, so it might have allowed me to avoid him. Munoz did everything right last year for me, except he only had 22 saves, and they kind of filtered in another option for saves last year. But he added a changeup or something this year, maybe help out strikeout total. But Seattle last year only had 34 save chances, and he had 22, and they split a little bit at some time. Brash could be a factor. He's going to maybe miss a month. He's coming off that internal brace. I guess I didn't put that little highlight, that number there, but he's coming off the internal brace thing. So he has the potential to do it. The command's a little bit worse, but he's definitely a really talented arm. Santos, I don't trust at all to stay healthy. I mean, gave him 45 games. DeGrom came out as the 4th best pitcher. Long resume of success. I gave him 30 starts. I think they're going to, ease him into the season where he's going to be like the 5th starter out of the 8. So it kind of goes along with what I'm thinking, 30 starts. But he's going to pitch over 6 innings, start, throw strikes, strikeouts, and if he's a shell, if he can pitch how he was before, he's going to be pretty awesome. Nathan Eovaldi, really good arm, but he tends to miss some starts. Much better the last few years. Throws strikes, kind of hangs in games, and can win some. Get some wins because he can pitch a little bit longer at time. John Gray, talked about him maybe in the bullpen. He was injured last year. Had whatever the issue was, I kind of backed away from him. But his numbers were bad last year. But there was a stretch where he was at least helpful. Tyler Mahle, I just don't have confidence in him. He's coming off Tommy John. Cody Bradford is a guy that should be helpful. He pitched really well last year. He needs to prove that he can handle the innings. I only gave him 5 innings per appearance, but he showed something. I think he might be serviceable. Kimura Rocker, I think that is. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but anyways, I'm not sure the innings are going to be there. I only gave him 4.7 innings per appearance. Gave him 18 starts. He's a guy that's going to have to beat me, and especially if he goes higher. The strikeouts line up pretty good, and but lack of experience. And I stuck my neck out in the bullpen, pretty much a wild card. I just don't have a lot of confidence in their arms that most people think in this bullpen. So I put Jack Leiter as a potential closer. I only gave him 17. I'm just giving him 17 saves just to show, like, pay attention to this guy. He potentially could do it if if he doesn't make it to the rotation. He was really good in college, struggled a little bit in the minors, but then he was a little bit better last year, but he didn't kind of get it right in the majors. But if he only has to throw a couple pitches, he can strike out batters, and I think it would be helpful. Alejandro Rosario is another guy, a speculation guy that could potentially close, look really good in the minors, throws a big fastball or a slider or something, the combination. And Colwyn's another guy that throws kind of hard that potentially could surprise and be a bullpen. I'm not going for the Chris Martins and those other things. So I'm just trying to, give you names maybe to pay attention to. And if you want the Chris Martins or something like that, you can kind of chase them down. Chris Sale, great pitcher last year. We're right at the number. I got to bang this out in 25 minutes. Chris Sale's been really good last year. Length of innings, everything lined up. Strikeouts, thing more of the same. Didn't give him the 32 starts. Schwellenbach had a little history of a shoulder or something, and he pitched really well, had command, everything lined up. I just couldn't give him the 30 starts. So he goes in that same range with all those good pitchers, and I like him just as much, but that's just enough of a thought in my back of my head where I'm not sure. I just want to kind of show that when I was doing it. There you go, Spencer Strider, another guy didn't put the internal brace thing. I think they're going to ease him into the season. I gave him 22 starts, so you're talking later in May, and it might take him a little bit to get up his innings. So the numbers will probably be pretty good when he's on the mound. Just not gonna, I guess he's backed up a little bit in drafts, but where he goes right now, I think I'm not going to kind of go after it, even though I like his arm. I just like to see him coming off the injury and how some of these pitchers react to it, because I really think they need more than 12 months. Ronaldo Lopez, ERA of 1.99, was really, crazy good last year, really above his skill set. Gave him 28 starts, 5.5 innings, 150 innings this year, a little bit more. Gave him enough respect where he's least helpful but not as dominant. Grant Holmes is going to kind of fight for stuff with Ian Anderson, but when I looked at Grant Holmes, I know they pitch pretty good. I just didn't see enough there, like to support like the length and to continue success. I think just more as he pitches more games, he gets more exposed. The book comes out on him, and the hitters kind of catch up to him. Ian Anderson battles command. They've talked about him a little bit helping. Brace Elder's been a little bit better in spring training. He's done it in the past. Not a big strikeout guy or throwing hard, but just I actually lean towards him a little bit, but I could be wrong. So it's just the back end. That's my opinion of people I kind of thought that could get starts. Iglesias obviously pretty good. I put AJ Smith-Shawver in the bullpen just because they have so many good arms and he could help lengthen that bullpen. Sandy Alcantara's been really throwing hard. Been a volume pitcher in the past. He looks like he's ready to go. Gave him 30 starts. I'm willing to gamble on him and see what happens. The strikeouts aren't really there, but he gets the extra innings to kind of make up to it. Max Meyer had talent. Tommy John surgery, underperformed, got sent to the minors last year, and then it was almost like he was pouting and got worse. But he has some talent. People are kind of onto him a little bit now. Didn't give him I got him 148 innings. He needs to prove himself. Ryan Weathers last year, kind of a long-term player in the pitch a few times in the majors and just kind of underachieved, but he looked a lot better with Miami, but then he got a finger injury and it kind of lasted the whole year. So I haven't seen any reports on him in spring training, so I don't have a mental picture if I'm interested or not interested. But even with the ERA of 4, he potentially could better, but they're not going to win a lot of games. Same thing as they're talking about the White Sox, 63 games. The wins are going to be tough to come by. Cabrera's a nice arm, just doesn't get the lengthening innings, and just strikeouts are there, and just injuries are always there, a problem. Nothing at the back end. I gave Nardi, I think he's the best arm there, but he's got an injury. He's not going to be ready at the beginning of the season, but really, really messy there for bullpen arms. I mean, the Fulcher guys, the name out of the gate, people would think, and I put the Laubert Aries, another guy that fits into with like that Texas reliever that he potentially could emerge later in the year as a guy that could potentially close, but just more of a name to keep an eye on. So throws pretty hard, and like I said, when I'm putting the 8 saves, it's more like who's this guy's going to get 8 saves? Should I pay attention to him? Kodai Senga was really good 2 years ago. Only made 1 appearance last year. Went on the mound. I think he's going to be successful. I did take a draft that I could have had him or somebody else, and I took the other pitcher. I think it might have been Gill. I think he goes, and I didn't think Gill had an issue at the time, but he did. But Senga, if he's on the mound and he can stay there, but he has a history of shoulder injuries and he missed all that time last year. So, but his price point is a lot more favorable this year, and he has had success in the majors when he was on the mound for that first year. Shawn is pretty discounted now. He was pitched really well last year, was helpful. Don't give him like stellar numbers, but now that he had an injury and it's an oblique, so I got him knocked out for 5 starts. So I think that his ADP is slid like 5 or 6 rounds. So I think that based on the comparisons of the pitchers, I think that it's okay, and he could potentially be better than what I have here. But willing to take a shot with him. Montas got an injury. Peterson overachieved in ERA, but the strikeouts and the other numbers didn't line up. I'm not sure Clay Holmes is going to get. I gave him 5 innings per start. I like to get people to get excited about him, but I just didn't see enough where I'm going to go after him. McGill's had a guy that thought would be better, just nothing there. I shouldn't say nothing there. I think that he has, if he had better command, he'd be a little bit better. Griffin Canning just up and down. Edwin Diaz, great closer. Big strikeouts. You know he's going to be a good player. Mets are projected for 90 wins. They're going to have a pretty good offense. That's going to be helpful there. So, you know, is what it is. Zach Wheeler, a great pitcher, been really good for the last 3 or 4 years, and better than expected in my mind. And just been good. I'm not. I think he's still rated as third or fourth or fifth or something. You know, but he, can it go on forever? I'm not sure, but he's rated pretty good. Aaron Nola has just been up and down. Just too many games where he just looks like he's an ace one day, and then he just struggles like, a couple times and just kind of gives away the edge. Home runs are a little more relevant for him. So, but he falls in the range where some other arms that you think they have more upside and can probably help you in ERA. But Nola, probably has a better chance to help you in WHIP than ERA. Ranger Suarez really good at the beginning of the year. I think he was like 10 out of 11 starts was awesome. Then he got hurt and he struggled a little bit and got hurt, and he saved teams at the second half of the year because they didn't have all the negative numbers added to their stats. But his walk rate's a little bit higher on this. Luzardo, people are on him, throwing harder. Well, he throws pretty hard anyways. And these guys he thought would be a lot better pitcher 2 years ago. He gave 30 starts. The numbers, I think 200 strikeouts. But there's just enough injury things. I couldn't give him, 30 starts. And, I think that he's getting a little bit of buzz, and even the strikeout rate could be a lot higher. So if you believe in him, his price point was relatively free, like a top 300 player, like around 300 ADP area. But I think he's moving up 2 or 3 rounds. So he kind of has to prove it a little bit more for me. Christopher Sanchez is a great changeup. Improving arm, throws his fastballs are more like 94. His strikeouts could potentially pop. Didn't give it to him, but I think that he can make 30 starts there. I like the efficiency. The Painter thing is people thinking maybe the end of May, but the way the reports out of Philadelphia, it sounds like it might be middle of the summer, and they're going to really kind of ease him in. So I think I like his arm, and I would consider carrying him if he was going to miss 6 weeks, maybe like a Skeens or something like that. But they're really going to limit him out of the gate. And I think I'm going to just let it see what happens. But I think he's going to be good when he's on the mound. It's just going to take him a little while to get ramped up for enough innings there. And I only say that's another guy that I only gave him 4.5 innings per appearance. That hurts his wins and his length of success there. Washington, Mackenzie Gore was really awesome. Like the last 7 or 8 starts last year, he looked like the light bulb went on. And so I don't have him with great numbers, and the whiff's kind of cloudy because of the giving up too many hits, and the walks are a little too high. But he could improve a lot. The Washington isn't going to win a lot of games, over under 70.5, 28 wins out of their bullpen last year. But Mackenzie Gore could improve this year. Neutral on him, depending on the price point. But there's a couple other arms I like a little bit better right now. Jake Irvin doesn't have the strikeouts. The command was okay last year. Gave up some home runs. I think he'll back up a little bit. Wasn't impressed with Mitchell Parker. The DJ Hertz guy is the sneaky player that could get a few more starts. The strikeouts line up good. The command's off. Going to be a little up and down, but I think that worth a flyer. Soroka for Braves or wherever he went to the White Sox was just never got to. Ever since he's got hurt, he hasn't been the same player. I think the first report on spring training was okay, but nothing at the back end there. And Finnegan has the most experience for saves, so I just gave him that. I'm going to try to not buzz all the way through this too fast. Shotei Igmanaga was really good last year. Has had an ERA under like 3.0 in Japan for like 3 or 4 years in a row. But I didn't give him the whole show there. Home runs a little bit higher. The walk rate was great. Strikeouts probably backed it up a little bit. But, I think he's a nice solid arm. 13 wins, 3.47. And just like when I'm doing these projections, the formula for that gets for the ERA and for the ERA, it's a little different than most. It's not like, but it rewards pitchers that get more strikeouts, and it punishes the guys a little bit more when they give up home runs. So it's not like if he had 0.9 home runs, his ERA would be a lot better. But just so it's a formula, but it's consistent through the whole player pool, and their walk rates and everything else are kind of tied to it. So Justin Steele's been a decent arm for the last couple of years. Going to win one out of every 3 starts. Kind of be an okay serviceable arm. Talion I think he overachieved a little bit for me last year. Strikeouts aren't high. Boyd, they gave him I think they gave him like 2 years for 25 million or something. They gave him a bunch of money, and his sample size for last year was really good, but I'm not sure it all carries over. So his numbers, those three, that 3.78 and the 1.22 whip is probably better than he's ever done in his career for like a full season, but I don't think he's going to be as electric as his short sample size. He's a lefty pitcher that has pretty good command, and the strikeouts have crept up there. But, so kind of neutral. Kate Orton's an upside guy, but I don't think he's going to make any, be back in time. He's kind of going to be slow out of the gate, but has to prove himself. Ben Brown was okay at something last year a little bit, but, walks are going to be a little bit of a factor. Presley got the advantage. Porter Hodge was really good last year and showed improved command at times, but his walk rate came in at 4.3, so in strikeouts. So I think he could get some saves, and Presley's getting a little bit older and could go back and forth there. But Presley, based on experience, gets that for me. Hunter Green was really good last year and emerged as an ace. ERA like 2.84, 2.86 or something like that. The strikeouts were there. Could use a little bit better command, get the home runs under control. But he had an injury at the end of the year, so I gave him 30 starts, and maybe I should have tapered that back a little bit because of that injury. But I like him, and I think that he showed he could be an ace last year, and I think there could be a progression. But long as there's no news about his, of any injury in spring training, I think he's a go. Nick Lodolo's a talented arm that hasn't get there, and he just seems like he gets injured or disappears with his command or something. But his skill set projects well, and I looked at it, same thing. I could have backed him up, but I gave him what I thought was fair for all the strikeout rates and the home run rates and the walk rates and hits per nine, and he hits a lot of batters too. So that gets a few more base runners that don't show up in the whip thing. But I think the talent's there. And as long as he's clean, I think he's the type of guy that you want to gamble that could pop, especially if he's like a round pick 300 or so. Brady Singer was pitched really good a couple of years ago. I think when Strider had that really good year, Singer was a really good pickup, but kind of waffled the last couple of years. But I think that a back end arm worth his shot, see what he does. He's pretty much free. Nick Martinez really got his command. He's walked like 1.3, 1.7 batters per nine, and was really a pretty good arm last year. So I think he gets a good chance at the starting rotation, but I think the walks will back up a little bit. Doesn't get enough strikeouts, so more steady. I don't know if he'd be as good as last year. I liked Andrew Abbott last year. I think he had a shoulder injury, and it really kind of was reflective of his strikeout rate. So he's a player that I will be aware of in the waiver wire and see how he does. And he could be a late dart, but he has to kind of show himself. But I think there is something to him there as long as he's healthy and on the mound. Rhett Lauder, I had a lot more expectations, but he's already hurt, and I just knocked him out for half the season, and we'll see what happens. But he's a guy that is pretty talented. See what happens. Alexis Diaz got the shot at saves, sucked last year, walked too many batters, got in trouble. They only had 36 saves last year, and the bullpen had 27 wins. I think most people drafted Diaz figuring he'd get 6 or 7 wins, 30-something saves, and the team wasn't the same. But he's got a little hamstring injury, but in spring training. But I think he'll be okay. Freddie Peralta is been a nice arm the last couple of years of strikeouts. Tends to walk a few too many guys. Kind of disappears at times. Gave him 30 starts. That's what he's done. I think he has a little bit of risk for me. He gives him home runs, but it is what it is. Brandon Woodruff is a guy that, what do you do with that guy? He's coming off an injury, shoulder injury, missed most of last year, I think, or all of last year. Pitched a little bit, maybe not in the majors, but I gave him 28 starts, and I gave him in a range where he has showed before, even backed up his walk rate a little bit higher, maybe bumped up a little bit in the home runs from rust and lower strikeouts, and but it came out pretty good. So I think that where he goes, if he's showing on spring training, I think he'll move up, but he's worth a flyer. Cortez had an injury last year. He's been okay for the Yankees, just couldn't give him enough. I think that just could be a factor. Tobias Myers pitched okay at times, didn't have length in games, but a guy that should improve a little bit. Savelli was a guy that they liked a lot last year for Tampa, and he just didn't get there. And now nobody even wants him. I think he had a little bit of an injury too. I gave him 27 starts, but I think where he goes, he throws enough strikes. He doesn't get a lot of strikeouts that he could be helpful. And the Brewers tend to, hang in there and win games. Last year, their bullpen had 51 wins and they had 53 saves. That's a great combination, but I don't think the structure of the bullpen and the starting rotation, I guess the starting rotation isn't as strong where the bullpen could get wins, but the bullpen, I don't know if it's good enough. So Trevor McGill got the job last year or filled in pretty good with Williams out. 26 saves. He a little nicked up early in spring training, but when I was doing this, I didn't see any injury thing. I think his command could back up a little bit, but he's probably the best guy for the job. Payamps isn't good enough to keep the job, maybe get some saves. We'll see what happens. And the Jacob Misiorowski, but he has a talented arm, doesn't throw enough strikes. Got to see him on the mound, improve himself, but I just put him in the bullpen for upside. I gave Skeens the stamp of an ace. And 14 wins. It's the team's only 75 and a half wins. Gave him 12.1 strikeouts, command, the walk rate, 6.5 hits. He just I think these are different majors. 258 strikeouts. I'm sure he's the highest on the board for strikeouts, but I think he's a workhorse horse. He's going to get 6 innings to start. He throws enough strikes, and he added a couple pitches, should get better. Jared Jones, I think he added a sinker this year, which isn't really incorporated in a big jump, but he was up and down. He looked good early, struggled a little bit. Walk rate's not there, and home runs are a problem, but I think he improves. Pretty good numbers there, but he goes in a range with a lot of other pitchers with upside. I'm not sure he gets all the way there, and the other ones I might like the wins a little bit better. And I didn't give Jones 32 starts in the back of my head. Mitch Keller's kind of coming off a bad year, kind of an inning eater with potentially upside, pretty much free. Bubba Chandler, people like him a lot. Think he could start in the majors. I don't think he has enough experience at AAA, and the way they brought Skeens around last year, I don't think he's on the same path. And I think he was a batter before and they switched the pitcher, but the reports are really good. It's just going to be a little bit of command getting to the majors, and the home runs could be eating the equation. So I get it. I'm not sure that he doesn't light me up where I want to carry him. And I guess if you made the starting rotation out of spring training, it would be a factor. David Bednar, give him a bounce back. We'll see what happens. He was so bad walking guys, giving home runs, and he plain sucked that I'm not sure I'm going to go fight for him, but he should be a little bit better. Sonny Gray, guy that, pretty good arm, but tends to miss, 3 to 4 to 5 starts a season. Gave him 30 starts, was pretty favorable. Has been pretty good on the mound. Eric Fetty pitched pretty good for the White Sox. Got traded to when he went a career, I think, and he pitched for the White Sox, did okay, and he went to St. Louis. Strikeouts just aren't there, but I think he'll be an okay inning eater. I really looked at Quinn Matthews and McGreevy. I don't think either one of them are ready to be. They're going to be a whip risk, and one doesn't get enough strikeouts, and the other one has command problems. So I think they're interesting. I just don't know if they're going to hit this year. So I'm not looking for them in drafts. The back of the rotation, nothing there. Ryan Helsley, everything went right for him last year for the saves. I just don't think that's repeatable. Not much at the back of the rotation there. And then let's see, Corbin Burns. I'm not as bullish as everybody else. I think everything's there. The strikeouts have backed up a little bit. I think he's a solid arm. He just didn't project as well. He rated a little bit lower for me. But, he could potentially win more games. They got 86.5 over under. Zach Gallen, I expect him to bounce back, and he's won games in the past. He's been pretty good at win games. So I actually gave him a little advantage over Burns as wins. And Burns' overall numbers are a little bit better, but Gallen's, got more strikeouts. So kind of an interesting number there. I like Brandon Pfaadt a lot better. This year, he just looked like he's on the rise. Can struggle with home runs, the command that's there. If everything's a go, I think he's going to get 200 strikeouts. Gave him 32 starts, got pretty good command. Merrill Kelly and Eduardo Rodriguez, they've had success in the past. They could be back-end inning eaters. Kelly has a little advantage in whip with better command, less strikeouts. Montgomery lost some weight, been kind of a dog, but he might, last year. So we'll see if he can bounce back. But, those are names, those 3 play names, might be serviceable. at the back end there. AJ Puck is going to get the advantage at saves. I think Martinez can pitch multiple innings, but we'll see how that goes back and forth. But Puck has actually moved in front of Martinez in most drafts. So I guess German Marquis, if he got out of Colorado, would be a player of interest. But the rest of the pitching staff, I'm not interested in. I think the Chase Dolander guy should improve and get strikeouts. And I don't know if he's ready. He looked like he was too far away. I gave the advantage for saves for there to Victor Vodnik. Same thing with they had 37 saves, which isn't bad last year considering how bad they were. They were over under 59.5. So Seth Halverson pitched really good for stretch in the majors, which is a tease, but his stats in the at AA and whatever didn't line up. But a big fastball, 100 miles an hour, he is what it is. And then we got the Dodgers. I gave Ohtani 22 starts. Figured that he's going to miss 4 or 5 weeks where they don't kind of rotate him in. It's going to be good on the mound. Pitch once a week. Blake Snell gave him the most starts on the team. Maybe rest him at the end of the year for a start or two. We'll see what happens. Was really impressive the last 2 years. Still gives up too many walks. Tyler Glasnow gave him 25 starts, 150 innings, only 16 more. If he could make 28, 30 starts, he's going to be a great value. The strikeout's going to line up 197. He's going to be really impressive. Yamamoto is same thing. He got hurt last year, missed some time. If he could I gave him 28 starts, didn't give him 32. If he get a little more length, Sasaki, I think that he's going to be kind of almost parallel Ohtani. Try to slow him out of the gate, keep his innings limited. So really kind of, really 6 starters there because then, you got Kershaw eventually back and they got Goslin that could mix in that I didn't put him in and Dustin May. So the core of the pitching staff is really good. It's just, how do you rate them all and give them enough innings and how this is project. So it's going to be a wild card. So Dodgers pitchers are kind of discounted this year because of that, because you don't know exactly what's going to happen. Tanner Scott has the advantage because of, everybody, the manager said he kind of would go with him. We'll see what happens. If his command's on, he's going to be really good. If he's walking guys, Yates is going to get a chance. Treinen's a viable arm. And then we're going to buzz through the last two. Dylan Cease, command got better last year. He's improving. Strikeouts are there. Going to win some games. Michael King, I'm not sure he's repeatable. I gave him a pretty good rating considering the jump in innings because I'm really kind of fearful of the innings jumping that much. So, but he is pretty good, so I can't say for sure if he gets injured or backed up. Yu Darvish coming off an injury, discounted in drafts, has enough experience where he can bounce back. Even his numbers were okay, kind of finding that Scherzer, Verlander type of role. They were, the experience weighs out. Pivetta got paid twice, has a little bit injury risk because he had like an elbow or forearm last year, but his command has really improved. I gave his ERA under 3.64, which he's never got that far. That's pretty good. Matt Waldron, a knuckleballer that kind of an inning, not much there. Suarez pitched really good, and him and Jason Adam. Suarez kind of faded a little bit, but he should keep the job. My ERA isn't as strong for him, so Adam could be a sleeper, or even Estrada could kind of get in his way if he can get his command up. He was really good at the end of last year. And then Robbie Ray coming off an injury. Strikeout should be there. Length of innings should be a little bit better, but I'm not 100% sure that the command will be there and home runs could be a problem. Logan Webb doesn't get enough strikeouts, gets the innings, made 30-something starts. Verlander, same thing. Veteran pitcher with a bum shoulder last year. Kenny Bone back. He's pretty much free. He's done it before. You give him a shot, see what happens. Like Kyle Harrison, he was pretty good for 4 months last year. He had a sore shoulder, struggled for like 4 or 5 starts, so he gave back some of his gains. I think he's the right kind of flyer. He falls in there with Detmers. Hayden Birdsong is a guy who's going to get a lot of strikeouts. Walks are kind of a problem. Flashed a couple of times last year. I don't think Hicks can make it in the rotation, and Black's a guy that seemed like he was better. And I like Ryan Walker a lot in the bullpen, and Camilo Duvall is at least a guy you should handcuff if you can put the two together. But Walker has the advantage where I think going to pitch him in a lot of games and get the extra innings, and it's a really pretty good comparison. So that's my buzz through the pitching, and I'm trying to make this at the deadline I got to go on a conference call in 1 second if I could figure out how to end it. But thanks for watching, and we'll see what happens here.